Everything has happened as I hope it has. We are now being broadcast to the world. My name is Chris Maguire. I'm delighted to be hosting this event today on behalf of Mathens, and we're looking at Liverpool's tech and creative sector. We've got 9 fantastic speakers to get through today, so there really is no time to delay. We're going to break it down into 2 formats. So we're going to have a panel of 6 tech businesses as well, and then we're going to finish with 3 experts who are going to give an overview, and then we're going to open it up to questions from the audience. So feel free to submit your questions through the Q&A at the bottom as well, and I've got some general questions as well. I do need to wish Andy Ken a happy 26th wedding anniversary today. Anybody out there thinks there's nobody in the world for them should look at Andy as their inspiration. There is somebody for everybody, Andy. Congratulations to you. So our tech companies are Gavin Sharrett, MD at Mashbo, Mike Latham, co-founder of Ticker. Matt Latham at Ticker. Matt needs to leave at 11 o'clock, but thanks for joining us, Matt. I appreciate that. Lorna Davison, CEO of Red Wigwam. Dean Ward, co-founder and CTO of Evoke Creative, and Andy Ken of Angel Solutions, who I mentioned earlier. And last but not least, we have got Syra Arif, the implementation manager at Orca. Welcome to you all. So, you know, a loud response there. Thank you very much. And then we've got the tech experts as well. We've got Jane Croft, associate solicitor at Napthins, who are sponsoring today's event. Liam Kelly, CEO of Make Liverpool. And last but not least, we've got Anna Hayes, managing director of Active Profile. So welcome to the 9 of you. A magnificent lineup so far. I'm going to start with Gavin Sharrett, if I may, MD at Mashbo. Gavin, when I realised we were going to be doing this as a Zoom call and we were going to be let into your room and into your house, I'd have been so disappointed if I'd found you, you know, in a very, you know, anonymous looking flat. But you've got a rabbit in your background. Just explain the significance of that rabbit picture.
It's actually the family, so there's 3 of us. So the representations of all the 3 of us in the house.
Which one are you?
I'm the bear.
Okay.
That could be taken so many ways. So.
Gavin, you are now a doyen of the Liverpool City region's tech community, which basically means, like me, that you're getting old. Just tell us a bit about what Mashbo does.
So Mashbo is a software development consultancy, and we're predominantly working with businesses to improve their processes and to put streamlining in place. So we're currently working on a new project with a debt collection agency that's working with the challenger utility companies to change the way that they're dealing with their problems of knocking on doors and doing it in a more kind of ethical way and more transparent way. So we kind of bring streamlining and fluidity to what we're doing with all of our clients at the moment.
When we do lots of events like this, it's quite interesting. The feedback is people don't want to spend an hour or an hour and a half talking about COVID-19, you know, because you know, their lives are already dominated by it. Business just needs to get done, and business is being done. I do need to ask a couple of questions because it's quite relevant as well in terms of your business is nearly 9 years old. I noticed actually when I was doing my research for this that you launched a Google Hangout series for the tech community to stay connected during COVID-19. What impact has COVID-19 had on you as a business, but also on the Liverpool City region wider tech community?
Okay, as a business, we got hit hard by it at the beginning, that we just become to the end of all of our projects. We're about to start a new round of projects, so everything stopped. So my hair is a lot whiter than what it was beforehand. But I think during that, we've kind of built up this momentum of talking to each other, and we've actually picked up projects now where we're collaborating with other agencies and bringing skills together. So it's knowing where our strengths are, and also learning not to panic. Everybody's been affected by this, so it's a stepping stone, and that's why we created the Hangouts. And we've been doing some other Hangouts which were less kind of broadcast to everybody, getting a group of people together and sharing problems. And this is where the collaborations have come from.
You have been in business in Liverpool for nearly 9 years. How has the tech community changed in the city in that time, would you say?
It's changed, because when we first started, it was very much agency focused, and now it's more product led, and we're getting more and more challenger businesses, more and more startups going in there. We've got agencies now having a lot more focus on what they're doing. They're saying, like, during all this kind of COVID action, we've cut down and narrowed down our service offering to be kind of more specialist. And I think that's what's happening in the city. There's more specialists now.
Now, the final question before I come to Matt is nobody wants to work with you, do they? That's the bottom line, because I think one of the impacts of COVID-19 is that you've got 7 staff, but you're looking at working completely remotely, aren't you? Is that a good thing or a bad thing for the tech community if people are working from home?
I think it's a positive and a negative. So what we've discussed with our team is that we're in the process of losing our office, but we've said that we have to be together in a physical place at least once a week. But it's allowing people to work when they work best. We've got a couple of guys who are night owls, and I wake up in the morning and they've done a raft of work, and we're kind of progressing and moving forward. So it's just the way of the world. We nearly did this before Christmas, so COVID just forced our hand on it.
Okay, thanks very much. Best speaker we've had so far, Gavin, and definitely the best dressed. I'm going to come to Matt Latham, co-founder at Ticker. Matt, you and your co-founder, Tom McGillicuddy, officially launched Ticker in February 2019. You met when you joined Barclays Wealth on the same day. You target socially responsible investors. Where did the idea come from for the business? Business?
Yeah, so Tom and I worked together at Barclays. We joined on the same day in 2011. Our careers took different paths, but ultimately we both ended up working in the space of socially responsible investing. A few years before we launched Ticker, we started looking at how we could deliver socially responsible investing to first-time retail investors. So we launched in February 2019. We've significantly grown our user base over the past 18 months or so. Slightly slowed down during COVID. We furloughed some staff, which slowed us down in some areas, but actually May, June, July were record months for users, revenue, investments into the platform and things like that. Since lockdown, we've launched accounts for kids. So we've launched junior ISAs, and we've also become a registered B Corp as well.
You've hired 4 people actually during the lockdown in Liverpool. You've also got a London office. How big is the company now?
So we've hired 4 people this month, and we've grown the team in Liverpool to 10, and the team in London is currently 6. We'll probably hire another 4 or 5 before the end of this year, and that will be predominantly in Liverpool as well, where we can.
You've hired a lot of developers. What's been your experience of hiring developers in Liverpool? Has it been an easy task or a tricky one?
So it's interesting in the developer talent pool because obviously there's been some changes to the tax regime which affects contractors. So when we first started out, you could hire, albeit at a very expensive rate, contractors in London very, very quickly. So therefore it was quicker for us to hire in London. That landscape has changed slightly. And although the talent pool is definitely smaller in Liverpool, we find that people want a long-term career here, and the talent is equally as good. It just takes a little longer to come on stream and a little longer to get over the line. So we've doubled the tech team in Liverpool. We continue to try and grow our tech team in Liverpool as we can. But we have developers both in London and Liverpool. And actually, we've always worked partly remote and partly in offices. So we've hired new staff fully remotely outside of London as well. So we don't have a problem with doing that either.
You're the only fintech in Liverpool. Does that lack of a mature fintech community in Liverpool, does it hold you back?
I don't think so, because I mean, obviously the advantage of being a tech company and a fintech company is our ambition is to be national and then international as a business. So where our headquarters is increasingly doesn't matter. The fact that there's a cost advantage to having a bigger office in Liverpool and in London is to our benefit. The reason we have an office in Liverpool is simply because I live here and I didn't fancy moving anywhere else. But the fact that where we are headquartered is sort of irrelevant to our ambition, which is to be an international business.
Final question. Well, we did an event earlier this year. So much has happened since that event, Matt, it's fair to say. But the last time I checked, you'd raised 2.3 million in investment. How easy or difficult did you find the process of raising money as a Liverpool-based tech company?
Well, again, I think as a tech company, you shouldn't focus on where you're based. Your money doesn't have to come from where you are located. And actually, if you are a Liverpool-based company, to sit there and look insular and moan about the situation in Liverpool is not an excuse. Our investors come from Israel, Netherlands, London, all over the world. We did a crowdfunding round, which was a European-wide crowdfunding round. We look far and wide for talent, funding, and customers, and we'll continue to do that.
Yeah, that's a question I'm going to ask later, actually, about how important is it that Liverpool isn't too parochial in terms of its level of ambition. Somebody who's not short of ambition is Lorna Davison, the CEO of Red Wigwam. Lorna, you're putting everybody else to shame, actually, because nobody else has got a fake bookcase in the background.
No, you know it's not a fake bookcase.
Absolutely. You've probably written most of those books and read them all this morning because you're up at 4 o'clock in the morning. Just for those people who don't know, Lorna, tell us what Red Wigwam does.
Red Wigwam is an online portal that matches workers and hirers, and that's workers and hirers for anything from a 15-minute task to a 3-month contract. So it's a little bit like a dating site. So it matches on skills, experience, but also attributes. So people likely to turn up for work on time, do they have good attention to detail, etc. And the site does everything from booking the worker to checking their right to work in the UK by using things like facial recognition, to briefing them, to reporting, right through to payment and invoice. And we are a little bit different because we pay within 24 hours. So again, we employ all our staff and we pay them very quickly. So reward them for doing a great job.
No, but it's interesting actually, because I base it on my own experience. When somebody pays an invoice really quickly, you give an extra 50%. You absolutely do. And then you don't feel as valued when you're waiting, 3 or 4 weeks. You're based in the Baltic Quarter, which is seen as being the, the heart of the Liverpool's tech community as well. Do you think there's enough office space for the tech community and the right sort of space in Liverpool, in your opinion, Lorna?
I think yes, I do. I think there's great office space. I don't think there's enough parking. So if I can complain about the level of parking, but yeah, no, our space works very well for us down in the Baltic. We see a lot of companies come and go. So, if people that know the Baltic, we are in the Unit 51. So it's got lots of sheds where people have got their tech businesses, and we are in an area behind that. We see lots of people coming and going, which is great in one way for us because we get to meet lots of people with different skills.
You built your first business and sold it, Tactical Solutions, I think in 2011. I was looking back through my records, actually. I interviewed you about 18 months ago. And, you shared the story about the fact you retired first time around for 4 hours before you and your husband decided it wasn't the right thing for the pair of you. How easy is it?
No, my husband decided.
How easy is it to launch a tech business in Liverpool, in your opinion?
I think I was very naive, if I'm honest. So my previous business hadn't been a tech business, so I'm not from a tech background. And what I always say is we're tech enabled rather than necessarily just being tech. So I still see us as a service provider, but we use tech to be able to do that. So I think from my perspective, I was a little bit naive in terms of how to go around that. And I made lots of mistakes in the first place. In terms of when we decided that Liverpool was going to be our base, and then we actually brought in our own development team, I found that's been great experience in Liverpool. We've had some really great staff join us, some people with some real skills, but also people, as Matt was saying, with real commitment and wanting a career with us and wanting to do the full journey. So from that perspective, it's been a good experience for us in Liverpool.
Your business is completely predicated on flexible working, and I think you've got 130,000 people signed up to your platform as well. COVID-19 has changed our approach to flexible working as well. Do you think it will change the way the tech community works, not just in Liverpool, but in general?
Yeah, I think so. I think everybody has to change after what we've been through with COVID. I think we've all done lots of learnings about what works, what's great in business, what's not so great in business. And I think from my perspective, my tech team are all now working from home, and actually I can't imagine we'll ever get them all back into the office. So again, I think we have a base now that says we can come together and we can meet when we need to, but actually people can work, as Gavin said, when they want. So I've got lots of guys that like to start a bit later during the day, work a bit or earlier, and again I think that's fine. So I think tech world has changed, but actually I think it's changed for the better in that instance.
Yeah. I mean, because the sort of reality is that we could lose offices as we know them, but they could become collaboration spaces moving forward. Lorna, you're not somebody to sit on the fence, so I'm going to ask you the $64,000 question. What's missing in Liverpool's tech community, in your opinion?
I think maybe I'm a little bit different because I don't think maybe I'm as ensconced in the tech community as others. So I think from my perspective, I don't do enough networking within the tech community. So I think I do more in the general business, but not in the tech. So I think what's missing for me personally is I'm not mixing enough with some of the great people that are doing tech in Liverpool.
Thank you very much. Andy, I spoke to Mrs. Ken and I said to her, I want to invite your husband to take part in a panel on your 26th wedding anniversary. And she said to me, her exact words were, I don't need to buy him a present for our anniversary because that's what he wanted. So happy anniversary to you, Andy.
Thank you very much. That sounds about right.
Now, Angel Solutions is a bit different, evidenced by the fact you've got the ballpark and the ball pit in the background there from your office. What does Angel Solutions do?
So we've been going for 21 years this October. We make software for the education and the health sector. And so we've got lots and lots of software products in 19,000 schools and every local authority in the country. And I guess we're still tech, but we're specifically ed and health tech.
And how big is the company now in terms of staff?
There's around 50 of us, and we turn over about £3 million. And I guess we really do count our blessings. You know, I've got lots of friends and favourite restaurants and hospitality and people in the tourism sector that I know have been really hit hard. So as hard and challenging as it is sometimes working in the public sectors, I think we truly have been grateful to have some quite stable sectors for us and some products that at least bring in some income over this horrible COVID season.
We've just been, and feel free to drop a question into the Q&A at the end. You can also use the chat facility. Just been asked a question. It's not a question really, but Aaron Fontnot, which is a fantastic name. I love that name. He says, I think Liverpool lacks the tech startup culture that they have in other cities. The tech scene here is quite old. You know, do you think Liverpool needs to model itself on Manchester? Does it need to compete with Manchester, or does it just need to get on with what it does well?
I'm in two minds on this one. One is the obvious comparison is there, isn't it? I've been to national events where they invite lots of people and Liverpool's not even shown on a map. And I think, you know, you can get upset about that because I've been here 30 years now. But in other ways, you know, like we shouldn't be comparing England to other countries where different cultures, different education systems. I'd like us to be able to just focus on what we're good at and just you know, not worry about Manchester. But with different hats on in different meetings, there is the obvious comparison. And I don't know whether that's geographical, whether that's just because there's a national view. Events tend to go to, you know, Edinburgh, Birmingham, Manchester. So I do think we have an extra challenge in Liverpool, but thankfully, really good bunch of guys in Liverpool. We're creatives. You know, you look at when we bid for the capital of culture and we sent everyone off, you know, the bid down to London on the train. You know, we're talented, but I think we just got some of those extra challenges because often we can get overlooked purely geographically, I think, sometimes.
A question I want to ask, actually, if I may as well, is that, but I will just digress for a second. We put together a list with Anna, actually, and a couple of companies in Liverpool where we came up with a tech climbers list. And it was tech companies in Liverpool who were doing amazing things. And actually, the long list was like 70 or 80 strong. We were surprised, or I was surprised, you know, because I thought I was reasonably well connected as well. And I think in the end, we narrowed it down to 28 plus 8 ones to watch as well. So there are a lot of companies like Red Wigwam who, you know, maybe are so busy doing great things, you know, that they're not shouting about what they're doing, you know, in an overt way. Question we've been asked, or a point from Mark. He says many cities have a tech ecosystem and a speciality, i.e. EdTech, which is your bag, media tech, fintech. You know, what do you think Liverpool City Region's tech specialism is? Do you think it's got one? Because it used to be games, of course.
Yeah, I mean, to be honest, what Liverpool's really good at is community and bringing people together. And I think there's lots of different communities. So, you know, there has been fintech, there has been edtech, there has been health tech. But I think now that we're all working remotely, and to pick up on some of the other wonderful people on here, their points, I think if we are truly going to look to work together, I think what COVID's done is kind of leveled the playing field. So rather than everyone staying, you know, some of the bigger agencies are all in the same office and may not necessarily look to the other guys. You know, it brings the freelancers up, doesn't it? Because if everyone's sitting at home, then the freelancer is just on the same par as maybe somebody who's working remotely. So I know there are lots and lots of individual communities. I think sometimes our challenge is bringing all the separate communities together. I would certainly encourage any of those sectors to certainly be looking much more at product. I think we've certainly got the creative genius and the talent here. But I think anyone who's been used to a service industry, specifically health, tourism and hospitality, but especially in the creative sector, I think people need to start focusing their skill sets on building product rather than the spikes of getting a piece of work in, delivering it, and then having to go and look for your next, because we're always going to be susceptible to something like COVID.
A lot of boutique agencies in Liverpool, you know, boutique, you know, some people call it small, some people call it boutique. Do we need some bigger players in Liverpool to attract work from outside the region into Liverpool?
I certainly think if there's talk of investment or support, I really think that it's great to, I applaud and encourage any entrepreneur who starts up a business. And I think there is plenty of opportunity for those people. You know, they're often invited onto panels and there's a focus on them. it often feels like, if I look at, Lorna here, Dean, Matt, we've got some fantastic businesses who work nationally and internationally, and often those ones can be absent from panels. So I think those are the ones that I almost want to say, Dean, come and share with some guys, give them the next stage on. And I think for anyone who wants to grow, I think I've certainly benefited when I started Angel at having those at the next level up. So to answer your question, Chris, I definitely think we need more of those ones who are growing, who are employing, who have stable businesses, multiple revenue streams, who can adapt and deal with anything thrown at them, and they're still there, many years later. The wisdom that is contained in this room from people who know, about dealing with staff, you can add now dealing with COVID. There's so much wisdom there, and I think often that can get overlooked in Liverpool, where we seek to get panelists from outside or someone from America. I think there's a wealth of wisdom that sits there that can help support the next generation, the people who are starting up now.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know if you can see what I've got in my hand at the moment. It's a imaginary hand grenade, right? I've just pulled out the pin and I've thrown it into your ball pit there. Do you think the public sector in Liverpool is good at talking the talk, but not very good at delivering?
I once heard a really good friend of mine who's in that sector said he thinks that the city council and all the public sector should be more enablers, more facilitators, rather than getting in the way. And so, we work with the public sector, we work with a lot of those people. But I do think when you look at the skills that are needed, sometimes they exist in the private sector, but private and public sector, a bit like oil and water, they don't always mix for many understandable and normal reasons. So to be honest with you, I think over the years that I've been here, sometimes you can feel a bit of a distance. You kind of think it's too hard over there, so we're just going to crack on. And I think looking at some of the businesses here, I think some of them have just cracked on almost in spite of what's going on in the public sector, in spite of the opportunities. And I think it would be great to see if we can find some more ways of bridging the gap between them.
I'm going to, thanks very much, actually, Andy. Got some questions that have come through, but I'm going to come to those at the end, if I may. Shalula Jones and Mike Darracott, you've not been forgotten, needless to say. We've got 75 people watching today, which is great. I think it sums up, like Liverpool. We always get good attendees, virtual attendees in this case. So Syra Arif, implementation manager at Orca. I know Orca because they won a big award that we did. Just for those people who don't know, just tell us what Orca does.
Yeah, so ORCA stands for the Organisation for the Review of Care and Health Applications. So nothing to do with Wales. A lot of people do think that. So we're the global leader in health and care app accreditation and reviews. So I guess we're very well known for working on behalf of the NHS to review all health and wellbeing applications. So I guess our goal is not just to review, but also to distribute safe apps and make people aware that there is such thing as an accreditation process for apps.
Yeah, because there's 350,000 health apps out there. Lots of them aren't even working. So how do you know which are the ones to use? A bit like choosing the right podcast. Interestingly, actually, Orca were included in the Tech Climbers list last year, and I think there's a good chance that they might be included in the Tech Climbers list 2020-21 as well, which we're currently together. Now, I've got a dirty secret about you that I'm going to share, if you don't mind. Is that okay?
Yeah, go on.
Okay, all right. You don't know what it is yet, but you joined Orca in November last year.
Yeah.
You've never been to Liverpool.
No, I've never been to Liverpool. I've just about been to Manchester, and that's as far as I've got to. And that's it, yeah.
The reason I say that for is that you're based in London, you live in Harrow.
Yeah.
I sound like a stalker now, don't I? I'm not.
How do you know all of this, Chris?
If you look outside your window right now, you'll see a guy in a car. So the point I'm making is that you were recruited for Orca, which is based in Liverpool City region. Would you have accepted the job if you'd had to come up to Liverpool?
Short answer, probably no. And I think the reason I took the job is because I knew Orca were in the health tech industry, and that obviously for me meant that they have a great degree of flexibility when it came to like remote working and working from home and things like that. So, and even in previous sort of NHS jobs, before I started Orca, I was in North West London. We actually got to work with Orca as a client of Orca's. And so I already knew that Orca had a digital footprint in London. And that made me sort of want to work with them. But yeah, if I had to relocate, probably not.
Yeah, and the point is that, being slightly naughty there, you were never recruited to join the Northwest office, you were recruited to head up the London office. Do you think tech companies, say in Liverpool City region, do you need a London office? Ticker have got one, for example. Do you think you need a London presence?
I think with technology, and I think someone mentioned it earlier, I don't think there's a northern and southern divide when it comes to technology. I think technology is quite universal. So I personally don't think that you don't need one office or head office. I think you can literally be wherever you feel your digital footprint can make an impact to your end users. So I think for me, having a London office is great because a lot of our national meetings are in London. They're based in London, so it's just great for anyone that comes down from our head office to London office, and I'll be there to greet them.
So to quote Paul Young, and Lorna will remember Paul Young, the younger people on the panel won't, wherever I lay my hat, that is my tech home. Do you think that COVID-19 has changed the way recruitment or the way tech companies regard recruitment? So if you look at Orca, dynamic company, fast growing, etc., you don't need to work in an office all of the time. You can work remotely. I mean, Gavin was saying that Mashbro is looking at go remote. You've never come to Liverpool, albeit we are going to put that right. Me and Andy Ken, you can go into that ballpark behind. Do you think COVID-19 has changed the way tech recruits?
Yeah, I do think so. I think it's unfortunate in a sense that it's taken a pandemic to see that, whereas I think we could have already realized that some time ago. But yes, I think tech companies are now sort of seeing that there's a wider pool of talent across the UK, internationally, globally. I mean, even for us, we've got offices around the world now, and so for us, it's important to have a base where you're working, but also yes, it means that we can digitally connect to one another anywhere we want to. So yeah.
Okay, I just want to come to Andy Ken. Andy, completely left field here. I thought Paul Young was wherever I lay my hat, that's my home. But Mark has just come on the chat and he said it was Marvin Gaye, but it wasn't it?
I thought it was Marvin Gaye actually.
Was it Marvin Gaye?
Probably like most of our generation though, Chris, the things that we hear with a singer, we associate with they sung it. And now my kids hear a song, we get sung by that. You go, no. So I'm sure if you go back far enough, there were cavemen that sung some of these songs.
He come back. It was Marvin Gaye. It was the original, and it's Dave Walters. Yeah, well, listen, absolutely. I bow to your knowledge of Marvin Gaye. Now, somebody else who is a big Marvin Gaye fan is Dean Ward, co-founder and CTO of Evoke Creative, based over the water in the Wirral. Dean, for those people who don't know, just give us a Marvin Gaye song. No, just tell us what you do at Evoke.
So at Evoke, we design and manufacture interactive digital systems for some of the world's largest brands across multiple sectors. So probably most well known for our work with McDonald's over the past 6 years, design and manufacturing their self-service kiosks, drive-through systems, menu boards. And the way we work is we kind of work as a consultant, like a strategic partner with a lot of these large organizations to help them constantly innovate and improve their customer experience through technology. So JD Sports, Google, people like that globally, where we look to put in interactive self-service devices, customer experience products, digital signage. So pretty varied, but fundamentally what they're all trying to do is basically improve efficiency, increase customer experience within their stores, within their business, and improve sort of profitability at the bottom line, I suppose.
So when I go into McDonald's on the occasional times that I do, and I see one of those kiosks where I don't want to queue up, and I just go like that, and number 162 comes through, for a Caesar salad combo.
Yeah, not a Big Mac.
Oh, that's you, is it? You created that kiosk?
We did, yeah. Yeah, we've been working with McDonald's as a partner since, I think, 2014. So developing the kiosk initially, but then we look at pretty much the whole operational model. It's not just about sort of the hardware itself, it's how they prepare food, how they do service. It's the whole infrastructure. So it's not just about putting a kiosk into these environments. It's about how the staff can make the food more efficiently. We do also do the drive-through system. So we're working with View Cinemas at the moment. So where they have a real problem with people queuing for food, it takes 5 minutes, you've missed the start of the film. So it's pushing that journey back, using digital technology to kind of alleviate those pain points, and then making the sort of operational side of it much more efficient. And in turn, people spend more money, they make more money, they sell more food. So it's kind of win-win for the organisations that we work with.
Yeah, you mentioned View Cinemas and you mentioned McDonald's actually. I always think, I'm going to give you a big figure in a minute, and I think it's important to set it in some sort of context. So you raised £6 million from BGF. Now that £6 million, that would get you 4.5 million Big Macs, or it would get you 2 big bags of pick and mix at View Cinemas. How easy or difficult did you find it to raise that cash?
I think it was quite an easy process for us. I think just because of the opportunity in our sector, it's kind of our value proposition, what we do as a business. So I think when we went to market, we did get a lot of offers, I think, which was great for us as a business because it gave us some reassurance that kind of what we were doing was good. And I think the future, the viability of self-service and customer experience has still got a long way to go. And even more so at the moment where face-to-face contact and efficiency is even more, important for organizations to remain viable, I suppose. So we didn't find it too hard, to be honest. The hardest, the process was difficult. All the DD and the kind of, all those bits which come with it. But actually, it was quite fun, the initial rounds, going out to market and meeting with investment houses. We've actually...
I just want to ask you a question, if I may, is that when I was doing my research for this, I noticed that you created a kiosk which basically checks your temperature. It's obviously very topical, in terms of COVID world, because, high temperature can be indicative of COVID-19. In terms of your priority list, how high up the order is the word innovation for a tech company?
It's at the top. I mean, the organizations that we work with, we don't have, hundreds of clients. What we try and do is wrap ourselves around these large organizations like JD Sports, View Cinemas, McDonald's, try and add as much value and become a strategic partner and part of that journey. So if we didn't innovate and we weren't taking new ideas and new solutions to them, we wouldn't be viable, I think. And they wouldn't be viable as an organization. They want to keep refreshing their offer, keep improving the customer experience within the store or within the restaurant. So yeah, it's absolutely critical for us.
Don't go anywhere because we're going to come back to ask questions. But I just wanted to set the scene by hearing 6 fantastic tech companies. Now we're going to hear from the tech experts, if you like, or the wider experts. I'm going to start, if I may, with Jane Croft, Associate Solicitor at Napthins. Jane, interesting story because you joined Napthins in April this year, smack bang in the middle of the lockdown as well. You've only ever been in the office on your own as well. But I'll be honest, as somebody who lives in the People's Republic of Lancashire, I know Napthins very much as a Lancashire-based company. I hadn't been aware that you had an office in Liverpool, but you had an office for 2 years, which tells everything you need to know about me. Just tell us a bit about Napthins and what you do.
So we've been in Liverpool for a couple of years now. We've just been sort of slowly behind the scenes, organically building up the office, and it's all been going really well. And obviously, COVID sort of put the mockers on that a little bit. The idea was for Napthins, as you know, is predominantly a Lancashire firm, so we've got big offices, Blackburn, Preston, Blackpool, Southport, and also right up into the lakes as well in Cumbria. And the plan was to grow to have a regional presence, basically, and be a northwest firm rather than a Lancashire firm. And there's so much opportunity, I think, in Liverpool that a decision was made for the next office to be Liverpool rather than Manchester, so that we could, deal with the kind of businesses that we're looking to attract as clients.
We were talking off air before, Jane, before we started the webinar. I said, how did you, how important is a tech community to Liverpool City Region, and how did you find it? And you very honestly admitted, a bit of an accident really, you sort of stumbled across it. I mean, you're at the lower age of the legal sector, and you found tech through your day-to-day. How important is the tech sector to you, and how important do you think the digital tech sector is to Liverpool City Region at large?
I just think it's massively important. I think there's a real need for innovation generally, and I think as lawyers as well. I mean, the reason why I fell into it accidentally is because because I'm a corporate lawyer, so we are very sort of traditional, very stereotypical. We all wear suits and we're very serious, and I'm not necessarily. So it kind of became a sort of organic thing that I just ended up talking to tech guys at events and getting to know them and really just wanting to get involved with their journey.
Just got a comment actually from Matt Whittle. Matt Whittle here from BGF. I put on a bit too much weight during lockdown, so very glad I put the 6 weeks into Revoke rather than buying 4.5 million Big Macs or a big pick and mix as well. A great company and team, hence not hard to decide to back them. I mean, the point is that Evoca are a fantastic company. Do you think that Liverpool City Region's digital tech community, people aren't always aware of it, you know, because Liverpool doesn't shout about what it does, maybe like some other cities, Manchester, for example?
Yeah, I do think that what I think Andy mentioned before about Liverpool not necessarily always being on the map when you go to national events and stuff like that, and I do agree with that, and I do think the Manchester tech community is probably a lot more established than the Liverpool community. I wouldn't say there's a competition element, but I do think we could potentially look to Manchester for sort of, you know, how they've done it, what we can learn from what they've done really to build our community over here. I've always thought that the tech community was a little bit spread out in Liverpool, so it'd be quite nice to join up the dots a little bit. I mean, you've got Mashbow and there's, I think, Mando and a couple of others, and now they've joined the dark side and moved over to the business district. But then you've also got a lot of the startups that are mostly based in the Baltic, and then a lot of the sort of educational tech and all the other bits are sort of in the university area really. So it'd be nice to get everything a bit more joined up and a bit more together, and I think that'd help the growth.
One thing I've heard through the grapevine, Jane, is that maybe the Liverpool City Region ecosystem isn't as mature as elsewhere, such as Manchester. Would you agree with that?
Yeah, in the sense that probably Manchester have been doing it for longer, but I wouldn't say that it's necessarily better. I think Liverpool generally as a city is really well known for being creative, and you know, like the Beatles and all the rest of it. You know, over the years we've always had that kind of talent in the city, whether it's film, creative, music, all of that creativity is just massive in the city, and I think that's why we do what we do so well. We just need to keep capitalising on it really, and I think there's no reason why we can't eventually be as established as the likes of Manchester and Leeds.
Well, you mentioned the Beatles, but the chat facility wants more puns dropped in about Marvin Gaye. So
I've got no chance of it. Before my time, Mark.
Okay, I'm going to do actually, that's made me feel old, that is. Thanks very much for that, Jane. Liam Kelly, CEO of Make Liverpool. Liam, you're probably the person on the panel that I know least well. So just tell us a bit about yourself and what you do.
Yeah, I think that Andy Kemp told me to avoid you, so maybe that's why we don't know each other very well. He gave me a big fat warning many years ago, so I've been following that advice, sorry.
Liam, have a look through your LinkedIn requests, because you'll see there's one from me that is still pending. But I know you can put that right very quickly. You have got the power.
Yeah, you and about 1,000 other salespeople on LinkedIn, I'll tell you that.
Okay.
Yeah, so if you want a quick overview of who I am, what I've been doing. So I run a social enterprise called Make CIC. And predominantly we provide space for the creative and tech sector, particularly in the Baltic Triangle. That's where we started, but you know, more recently in Birkenhead and Wirral and the North Docks in Liverpool. I'm also the chair of the Baltic Triangle Area Company and have been for quite a few years at this point. Obviously, sort of the Baltic is quite well known for its dense population of tech businesses, but also creatives and the leisure industry as well.
How, as somebody who's immersed yourself in this sector for a long time, how would you describe the health of the region's tech sector in your opinion, Leah?
I think it's sort of a difficult question to answer, really. I mean, I'm not a tech person myself, and Make isn't a tech company, but obviously we are tech enabled like everybody is, and I've spent a lot of time with the tech sector and supporting and championing the tech sector through the Baltic Triangle stuff. And I would say that the sector is representative of where the city's at. I think the city's kind of has been in flux of growth over the past few years, you know, really excelling in some areas and really lagging behind in others. But I'm not sure that's necessarily indicative of a challenge or an opportunity that Liverpool has, and more about the sort of macro economy of the whole country. You know, outside of London and Manchester, you know, who really is sort of excelling in the global market at the moment. That's probably an opportunity for us, though, to be perfectly honest.
I was looking at your LinkedIn profile yesterday, and I looked at some of the posts that you've put in recently. Build back better is a theme, especially in Bootle as well, after COVID. If we build back better Liverpool's tech community, what will it look like?
I think that one of the areas that we haven't really invested time and energy into much over the past few years is that sense of community. And I think somebody said it earlier on in the panel. There's huge value in the networks and knowing each other. And I'm talking about a circular economy sense. So knowing who to go to find a solution to a thing that you don't provide, or even a question about, how you deal with staff progression and all that sort of stuff. There are a number of people on this panel that I've gone to with those kinds of questions over the past few years. The only reason why I know those people is because we've been at networking events, or we've been confident or happy enough to just spark conversations and ask questions. And I think that there needs to be more of that available, and we need to scale that as well. And actually, they're the enabling aspects that would help any sector in the city region grow. And I think that requires investment. To be frank, if you want to scale something, it has to be essentially like revenueized. It has to find a way of sustaining beyond goodwill. And we could do with more of that. And I think that is the role of us to demand that, but also the role of the agencies, the local authorities and the combined authorities to supply that as well.
How do you think, before I come to Anna Hayes, how do you think people outside of Liverpool City Region look at Liverpool City Region in terms of its tech credentials?
Well, I think that's wrapped up in the just more broad question of how do people look at the Liverpool City Region. I went down to London with the professional body in February, actually, which feels like years ago at this point. Yeah. And one of the workshops that we did was about the brand Liverpool, and there's been a lot of this brand Liverpool, worksheets of things that we could say and all that sort of stuff. And it was a decent event, but I think there are still challenges about what Liverpool means to other people, and I think that there still really isn't quite this unified, even sort of crib sheet of things to say and all that sort of stuff. I think we're quite far away from that at this point, and I think that the question that you've asked is about specifically tech, but which is a strength of the city region, and this idea of tech for good that the Liverpool City Region is trying to peddle is a positive message. But I'm not sure. I mean, none of us in this conversation have said tech for good. We've all described it in our own way, despite the fact that in the local industrial strategy it's written as tech for good. And I think that shows a bit of a disconnect between what the bodies and the authorities are saying for the region and what the sectors and representatives of the sectors are saying themselves. We need a bit of work there, I think.
Thanks, Liam. Just remember, LinkedIn, you'll see a pending request from me. Anna Hayes, I was just thinking to myself, how can I squeeze a Marvin Gaye song title into our interview? Let's get it on, Anna. That's the question. I didn't think Mercy, Mercy Me quite worked, I'll be honest with you. You're the manager, you're the founder, managing director of Active Profile. But I want to talk more about your tech credentials, which are considerable. Just tell us some of the things that you do in the tech sector.
So we're a PR and growth marketing firm, and probably over the last 4 to 5 years we've been working more and more with scale-ups, usually at the kind of post-Series A investment level, where things need to happen fast, and marketing and sales need to scale fast. So we became HubSpot partners about 4 years ago. We've created a model there to help businesses scale. So we're involved. A lot of our referrals for that through investors, so either pre-investment or post. But obviously the business started in Liverpool, and I was with Reuters for a while, but did a computer science degree years ago. But there's some of that somewhere still deep inside, a few numbers. So I think now, just in terms of the way the world's going, and from a data-driven perspective, it's quite interesting. Half of our business is scale up tech. Quite a lot of that is SaaS based, so software as a service. But the other side of the business is the property and the built environment client base, which are very, very different. So yeah, it's it's still a mix, but very different personas to deal with.
I think I'm right in saying that you're you're working from the Liverpool office today. That you're in the west wing of your country pile.
No.
No. But we've heard from people already today about about working from home, about working in the office as well. Collaboration is really important in the tech community. Given the fact you've got your finger on the pulse, what's your take?
It's really interesting. I mean, just talking about us as a company, yeah, we've all been working from home. We've set an expectation now that people come back in kind of a day a week between now and Christmas, and we just see how that goes, and we experiment with that and kind of limit people in the office. It's quite interesting. I was with Mark Lawler the other day, who heads up Baltic Creative CIC, and we were just kind of talking about some of the numbers of people kind of returning, and obviously Lorna and Matt, you're kind of within that community, and he was saying things about 80% of businesses are back in, kind of coming back into the office now, not full time by any stretch of it, but there's a routine there, within those businesses. If I walked through St Paul Square earlier, and I walked through this huge building here in the business district, it doesn't feel like the same sort of community activity as there was when I was down in Baltic last Thursday. So I think that in terms of the sector delivering economic value within the city, because we naturally collaborate, we naturally want to work with others, do others, use the coffee shops. Now space will change, no doubt about it, how people use that space will change. But I just thought it was really interesting because the survey data that Mark has around those businesses, 70% of them Baltic businesses collaborate. So, there's got to be some synergy there.
I'm going to ask one of the questions before I sort of open up to the discussion and ask some of the Q&A questions. Is that it's interesting that Napton's have put this event together today, and they've got like 75 people watching the conversation. So you can get things done, and you can create these communities and keep people together as well. But one concern that I've got, and you've probably got it yourself, is that the younger generation. How does the tech community and the creative community keep its doors open so people can do work experience? Graduates can come in. How do we do that? Because ultimately, the tech community or any business community is only going to be as good as its pipeline, isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that's the real risk of this, at this time at the moment, that if we're not careful, it's going to get forgotten as we, try and do our best to keep ourselves, on track, whether that be growth or survival. Yeah, I was with the University Management School last week, and they've seen a massive uplift as you do in times of recession of postgrad degrees. So they're and they're trying to get people in on those postgrad degrees, obviously from a revenue perspective too. But that doesn't mean to say, experience is absolutely crucial. We had a session last week, we did a break-into session, and 50 students and graduates who want to get into the PR and marketing profession on there. I think as a sector, we have to experiment and do some stuff that's not perfect, but, try and put some projects out there. Again, as everybody's talked about today in terms of a community, that community isn't just about businesses interacting, it's about students and young, our wider teams actually. It's not just about us as leaders talking to other companies, but it's about our community and our teams having those opportunities too. And the people who want to enter the sector having a gateway in. If we're not careful, we will lose that.
Right, thank you very much. And I'll come back to you. I'm just going to ask Matt Latham one question. Matt, if your answer is good enough and you get the thumbs up from the University Challenge type format that we've got in front of us, I'll let you go, because I know you've got to leave at 11 o'clock, but now would be a good time to leave. We've been asked a question from Marvin Gaye's biggest fan, Dave Walters, who says seed investment is always cited as a challenge in LCR. What do the panel think about the Angel Network, e.g., MSIF running the LCR Angels event on the 24th of September, for example? Is this valuable? But if I just ask you about the Angel Network in Liverpool, what's been your experience of that?
Well, my honest answer to that is when I was raising funds, I went to that exact event. We raised £2.8 million and I got 500 quid out of it. So I don't think it's the standalone solution by any stretch of the imagination. But as I said before, you've got to look far and wide. So just because the Angels in that particular event didn't like my business at that time, doesn't mean that there wasn't money there, and doesn't mean that budding entrepreneurs shouldn't go. You should explore all avenues for funding and cast your net as wide as you possibly can. Funding is not easy to get. You've got to bootstrap your way as far as you possibly can. Probably even further now due to COVID. Investor risk appetite is reduced. People are looking to invest in later stage businesses, not early stage businesses. So my advice to anyone looking for funding in Liverpool is look outside of Liverpool, look inside of Liverpool, but look outside of Liverpool. There's no point sitting in Liverpool and saying there's a lack of funding, I can't start my business. Because if you're going to start the business, if your business is good enough and it's going to be viable, there will be funding out there for it. Just because it's not in Liverpool is not an excuse to not do it.
Matt, I know you've got to go. You're not allowed to wave though, because that's one thing that people are now doing on every Zoom conversation. When they leave a conversation, they wave. So Matt, take care.
Thank you.
So I'll open up the same question, if I may, to the panel in terms of, and I'll paraphrase Dave Walter's question slightly. How mature is the angel network in Liverpool City region, would you say? And who wants to answer that one for me? I'll come to Lorna. I mean, you just raised some money, but you didn't go to angels, did you?
No, I didn't.
What's your experience of the angel network?
To be honest, I don't really have an experience of it, if I'm really honest. So nobody from it has approached me, apart from actually asking me to invest in other companies. So I actually haven't got any experience of a positive interaction in terms of my business, I'm afraid.
I mean, Jane, do you have people, and I'll come to Anna as well, do you have people coming to you saying, we've got money we want to invest, can you recommend some really good, sexy tech companies?
Not really, no. It is an interesting one actually, because the angels thing, so I qualified in 2015 and the angel networks have been going since before then, and we have been trying to build them in Liverpool. But I do think it's important for tech sector businesses to have that alternative kind of finance. When I started, there was a lot of conversation around non-traditional financing, because a lot of the banks, because if you're a developer and you've developed an app, the banks would go, well, there's nothing tangible for us to secure. You haven't got stock or vehicles or property that we can have that kind of security on. And it was very, very difficult for tech businesses to get any kind of funding. All these alternative funding scenarios now are all coming along, and as I think it's really great for that, and there's so many different sort of avenues, and I think it just sort of follows on from what Matt said. Really, the funding is out there, and it's just a case of looking for those different ways to get involved. I mean, we've been doing a lot since the pandemic with the British Business Bank, so future fund applications, CBILS, bounce back loans, but the future fund applications specifically are aimed at innovative businesses. So that the government, even in terms of the coronavirus sort of recovery scheme, they even carved out a niche for those kinds of businesses there as well.
I mean, Anna, there was a big survey that was done in Liverpool not so long ago where they were looking at the whole angel network in Greater Manchester, actually, as it was. And, they said that the angel investors in Greater Manchester tend to hide in the long grass, which is a phrase that sort of lived with me. Is that the experience in Liverpool City region? You've got people like, Sir Terry Leahy, who invests in a lot of tech businesses, including some locally, in fact, including Orca. Is there that angel network in Liverpool City region, in your opinion?
Yeah, I think there is, and I do think they're often accessed via advisors, advisors, meeting good businesses and having those networks, as we just talked about before, referrals, talking to people, asking the right questions. Using Living Lens as a good example. Living Lens were acquired earlier this year by Medallia. They had a very different approach and took on a lot of smaller smaller kind of crowdfunding before we knew it. A lot of smaller investments, but from a lot of those are from angels, but London-based angels. So everybody's had a different, everybody has a different requirement. I think private equity has a big role to play. I think Mark's just mentioned there around, kind of more support on understanding equity and VC investment, and actually finding the right partners. I know Lorna's been through that process recently of essentially interviewing the investor, and I think those sorts of experiences are really, really important, again, to share with others that potentially haven't gone on that road yet or that journey.
Okay, we've been sent 3 questions. I'm glad you mentioned Living Lens, because I've got some questions about them as well. First question is from Shalula. I love the name, Shalula Jones. Is the education sector really understanding what you need as employees from new staff? If not, what can we do to collaborate better? Gavin, does the education sector understand what you want? Because I think it should be mandatory for everybody working in tech to wear that top.
I think it should be. It's like a giant game of Where's Wally, but I think the education sector has got it now. It's just that we're waiting for that catch up to come into the industry. So I've got an example. My stepdaughter, part of her modules just gone to high school is women in tech. So she's at 11 years old now, and they're understanding what they've got to learn. She's obviously going to me, I don't want to do your job. I'd rather just TikTok. But she understands now how TikTok works. And my job makes things like TikTok work. So the education sector is there, but we've got this gap. But we've also then got, as we were discussing, like we're looking to go remotely. So how do we take somebody on work placement? So we've got to work around how that happens, because you've got to spend time with people to get them up to the standard you want and work in the ways that you want.
Dean, I mean, as a man who I'm sure spends a lot of time on TikTok, do you think the education sector understands tech now?
I think it's an awful lot better than it was a couple of years ago. And the access to technology and, like you say, a lot of the sort of dev kits and a lot of kind of what the children are doing in school. I mean, we're seeing a lot better quality coming out at kind of A level, at that kind of apprentice level than we have before. So I think it's a lot better. I think because my business is quite diverse in that we're a team of sort of product engineers and software developers. So from a software thing, I think we've kind of got that, but from maybe an engineering side, it's probably not as good for our business.
Liam, I mean, do you think the education sector gets it? I mean, I'm of an age where, I remember what careers advice was like, and it wasn't very good. Is it changing now?
So I think there's two answers to that question. One of them is I concur with what Gavin and Dean have said. The idea that tech is much more understood by the people who are teaching young people, and therefore young people understand tech. But what education's still really failing at is all of the soft skills, leadership, and just general work readiness. Both my personal experience and the experience that people have brought to me is that generally junior staff just don't understand some of the basic things that a company may require in order to be a productive member of staff. And I think that comes simply from the approach that is taken in school. Some schools are much better, but this idea of learning to fulfill an exam need rather than learning to join the workforce, which is, partly the responsibility, partly the purpose of our education system is to get people into, the productive workforce. And like I say, I think that then falls on businesses to train staff over long periods of time about how they want them to be most effective and be productive, and that's a huge cost, and therefore part of the barrier of employing young people in general, and also part of that experience trap. What people mean by experience is, have you had another job? Because if you haven't had another job, I don't want to be teaching you how to take notes in meetings.
I mean, Andy, somebody who is genuinely committed to working with young people, helping young people, move up the food chain. I've seen that with my own eyes with your good self, Andy. Does what Liam says, do you agree with that? Do you think that we're not teaching young people the soft skills that they need? And, when you bring people into your business is an all or nothing business. You throw yourself into it and buy into what you're trying to do, or you don't jump on that caravan. What's your experience?
Yeah, I kind of agree with everything that's been said. Obviously, because we work in the education sector for 21 years, I'm always caught between this, because it's easy from our side to look at the sector, whether that's higher education like universities, secondaries, primaries. I think they are under enormous pressure, the sectors. And if you think about a typical primary school teacher, for example, you're there to teach every subject. You're expected to be a geography, history, modern foreign languages, and computing expert. And then you add in the hardware and the technical challenges. You've got an hour for computing, and maybe you're wheeling a trolley out, and then half of the iPads don't work, and you spend half a lesson just logging in before you have to put it back and hope that no one notices the cracked screen, and you wonder whether it was there before. Now, I think the whole curriculum for that is so different from what we need in the creative and digital sector. And the education sector's challenge is we move on so quick. There are tools that get thrown at us as a sector that we can't keep up with. We're constantly finding little add-ons or new ways that we can work with our existing tech. So I think a gulf exists. And I think the only way to solve this is to keep looking at collaboration. And I've certainly got all the universities together. In fact, we had a real head of steam built up just when COVID hit, for looking for ways in which we can get some of those people who are thinking about what they want to do when they leave school, being inspired by the likes of the people in this room and the other wonderful people outside. Those tend, for me, to be the catalyst for someone to go, I'm going to spend some time of an evening or a weekend building my own website or doing some designs. And then to answer the question that keeps coming up in this session, which is how on earth do we now bring those people on? Because technically you can do stuff remote, but actually my biggest worry is that if I look at over the 21 years we've been running Angel, and I've got lots of people who've been with us, say 16, 17, 18 years, I think if you start remote, we've had 6 or 7 people join us during lockdown. I haven't even physically met any of them. I wonder what's to stop somebody working for anyone, because you're still looking at a little screen with a little thumbnail of the people you work with. That now I think is going to be a real challenge to companies like us, where culture is really important. Innovation days, birthdays off, big Christmas bashes, fun and games in the park. I think to bring new talent on and put your arm around them and support them on their starting journey, because they do need support and help, is going to be really hard if we are only able to be remote.
That's a really good point. You can't put your arm around anyone now, unless you're 2 meters away and you're wearing latex gloves and got hand sanitizer. I think the point you're making is that it's easier for companies that are established to then maybe work remotely. But if your starting point and you join staff in, how do they buy into your culture? You know, unless they've not worked with Andy Kent. I'm going to come to Lorna now. A question from Hazel Kennedy. Hazel, you share your Christian name with my mum, which can only be a good thing. How do we encourage young tech talent to stay in the Liverpool region and not disappear in Manchester and London? Do we need to focus on educating young people here about the sector more generally, and or increase visibility of job availability? I'll come to Sarah after I come to sort of Lorna as well. I mean, last time I spoke to you, Lorna, I think you had about 18 staff. And you said to me that, you know, you'd never mind losing a member of staff if you feel like you've helped them to go somewhere else, and you know they've outstayed the sort of journey that you can take them. Do you lose staff to Manchester? Do you lose staff to London? And how do we keep the cream of the crop in Liverpool?
Yeah, no, you're absolutely right, Chris. I always believe that if people move on and they go and do something bigger and better elsewhere, then I've succeeded. If they go on and do the same job elsewhere, then I've failed. And to be fair, I'm going to touch wood, I must be succeeding at the moment because I'm not losing staff. So I've not lost any of my tech guys at all, actually, but never mind to Manchester or London. But I think that's because we're at a very exciting stage in our development, and therefore everybody's very engaged, and it's, you know, that excitement's there. So I think that's the biggest thing we have to do, is we have to keep people engaged and excited on the journey. And that's not just about what's happening within our own organisation, but as you say, what's happening within the region. And we definitely need to make sure that those people can, because I think sometimes you get a little bit scared about opening people's eyes in case they actually think the grass is greener over there. But I think we need to be brave enough to say to people, go out and mix, go out and do different things, because actually you'll be a better employee for me, and actually hopefully we'll keep you longer.
Okay, no, I think you're right. If it's not interesting, if it's not fun, I mean, you know, Marvin Gaye might not be to everyone's taste, but people remember it, you know, through something like this. It keeps things, hopefully, jocular. Sarah, I mean, you're using healthcare and wellbeing at Orca as a way of embedding digital learning into schools, which sounds fascinating. Just tell us what you're doing there.
Yeah, so obviously as a health tech company, we want to use the theme that we work to, so healthcare, as a way of embedding sort of digital learning and sort of inspiring young talent, young students to look to careers within tech industry, not just health tech, but, you know, any sort of tech industry. So one of the things that we have a program called the Digital Healthy Schools program. And so this is our foot into the education, or our attempt to get into the education system. And we sort of work with schools and local councils to provide sort of local libraries for schools, so schools have an online resource to go to find safe apps, to understand exactly, you know, what constitutes a safe app, what do we need to be checking when we're looking for health and fitness apps. It's completely chaotic for a student to go onto an app store or play store and search a health condition, or get bombarded with so much, you know, junk. And I know one of the stats that we always talk about is there's only 15% of that 366,000 health apps that actually qualify as a quality app. So we want to try and make sure that students know exactly where to go to find these apps, and also inspire them to, you know, see what other digital leaders are doing within tech. So we've just set up a career zone. So we've asked various digital leaders of different levels, different backgrounds, to talk about exactly what they've been doing in their job. So it's a way of inspiring and sort of motivating young people.
We just did a bit of interference there. I think it was from your Wi-Fi, I think, but that's London Wi-Fi for you. It's not the same in Liverpool, you know. It's first class. So I want to come to Gavin. I've been asked a question here from Ravi Sibal. I hope I pronounced your name correctly, Ravi. Has anyone on the panel? Oh, sorry. I'm going to come to Ravi's question next. But Mike Darracott asks, how would you suggest tech SMEs in Liverpool City region engage directly with agencies like yours, if there are skills that can be used collaboratively, e.g. software development? So you are Mr. Collaboration. You know, what's your message to Mike? How can he engage with you if he wants to be part of the fam?
I think what we normally do is with everybody, it's like the door's always open. It literally is. Like any form of communication starts a conversation, whether it's a tweet, whether it's LinkedIn, whether it's an email, whether it's picking up the phone. What I've found more and more is people are picking up the phone more now. So actually, it's like you're saying, we're talking to each other. We've all got the Zoom fatigue, so that's kind of past. So having like the one-to-one Zooms, it's kind of past. But the more conversations you have, the more happens, and more referrals as well. So the more you tell people that the door's open, the more it actually happens. So that's what happened with us and Pixelbeard, who are our neighbors at the moment, and we just spoke to each other and we were kind of helping each other through the hard times. And then this opportunity came up. So we started helping each other out. And there was a time where my whole team was furloughed and the Pixelbeard's team wasn't furloughed. And they helped us to get a project over the line so that we could kind of bring revenue to the business. But it is like saying, don't be afraid to ask. No, there's no stupid questions.
Anna Hayes, I would agree with that. I think the thing about Liverpool is it is really open. I mean, somebody like Andy Ken, I mean, he opened his doors to me early on at my time at Northwest Insider before I set up Business Cloud. And it's just a really friendly place. And I think the tech community more so than others. That's an image that you would recognise, is it?
Yeah, definitely. We work all over the place, but obviously Liverpool's our home, and I think there's the friendliness, but there's also we're quite direct, I think, as a city. My experience of Manchester and Leeds as well, it's not as easy to get to the people that you need to get to. You know, I think with Liverpool, as you say, it is very open. I think we've got some really good advisors in the city. You know, so it's some good experience in the city to lean on. And I think it's about kind of share, as we're quite good at sharing. I think the point around having an enabling, kind of having a platform or people enabling that is crucial. You know, it's difficult, isn't it? Conversations only happen when the opportunity for the conversation arises, you know, and I think sometimes that's about somebody taking a proactive step to make that happen, or you're invited to something that, you know, you take the opportunity to reach out or do something. You know, if those opportunities are there, and that is something that I think, you know, the local authorities, you know, that they need to be creating those environments. It's not about them stepping into the conversation. Does that make sense? Am I making sense? Am I rambling?
I recognise the description. You described Liverpool as being very direct. I mean, my wife for nearly 22 years, you know, she's from Liverpool. Her whole family's from Netherton McGowl, and her late granddad George was a bit of a character, and I met him the second time I met him. He died 20 odd years ago. Second time I met him, he said to me, this is what he said, I don't like Scousers, and that was it. Carried on reading his newspaper. Now, I've been sent a couple of questions actually, and I gave him a big raps early doors, Ravi Seabal, who's just messaged me to say my pronunciation is perfect. I'm as surprised as you are, Ravi, on that. Has anyone on the panel tried to partner with a higher further education institution to help them understand what they need to be better? What was your experience if you did? I mean, a lot of companies work with universities, don't they? And they try and, you know, get graduates working in their business. Has anybody on the panel, has anybody worked with a university or an FE? And what was your experience, Steve?
Yeah, we've been working. So, well, Staffordshire University, I graduated from there a long time ago. Yeah, we've been working with them for about 8-9 years now, with their product design course. So not as sort of tech relevant, but still what we've done over those 9 years is basically do work placements, live projects, lectures where we've been going into them, setting them projects based on kind of the type of work that we do. And what it's done is it's changed some of the modules within that course to focus more around sort of technology integration into product design and engineering, but also looking at user experience and things like that. So, you know, user interface design. So what we're doing with them and what we do each year is set them like a live project, and it could be, you know, digital experience within retail or something like that. And then it's getting them, it's getting them thinking about different sort of, I suppose, different products, thinking more about the solution and sort of solution delivery as opposed to just developing, you know, like a physical product itself.
And I know a bit about Staffordshire University as well. I mean, you know, it'd be great if that was John Moore University or Liverpool University, you know, and you're working closely with.
Yeah, well, we do. We have since started working with John Moore's, with Chester, and we've done some stuff with Air Chelsea. Yeah, no, actually, Staffs is more long term because I kind of graduated from there, so I had good relationships with the lecturers. But yeah, we've been working with Liverpool and Chester for about 3 or 4 years now. So,
sorry. Has anybody else got experience working with?
Yeah. I think everyone will have their stories of working with universities, going into new lectures, and I think all those are very admirable because a lot of the sector, as you'd expect in Liverpool, very friendly and give it their time. What we were trying to do just before lockdown was there's lots of reasons why universities can't work together because, you know, they're all touting after the same revenue for that student. They all have to look at their bronze, silver, gold statuses in, you know, league tables. They're having to adapt all the time. And don't forget, the students and the lecturing is only a small part of what universities do because of all the research and stuff. So I think what we tried to focus on, what can we do? And if we're serious about doing something that doesn't worry about Manchester or what anyone else is doing, I think there's a common ground here where we got all the universities together and started to say, look, here are some of the things that we can do that bridge the gulf between the two. So for example, every time a student leaves a university, every single university in every department will always try and have a coffee with people here, and you end up trying to build relationships for a very small portfolio of those students leaving. So we said there should be direct access to all talent that leaves any university. And I think if we're looking for anything that we could do as a city, enabling it, I don't just mean building a website and a portal. That's the easy bit. That's just the tech. But actually making sure that the recruitment agents don't swoop in and start charging us £1,500, £2,000 for someone who's just left Liverpool University. That's a waste of everyone's money. I'd rather put that towards training and investing in that person than to somebody who's either been lazy because they've just lobbed it on a jobs board and someone's come and hoovered that up. But the reason I'm sharing the story is there was such a willingness from about 50 representatives from the creative and digital sector in the universities to want to work together, accepting that there are some areas that, of course, they won't. So let's not focus on what we can't do, but let's focus on areas that we can. And I think curriculum change is really hard. That's a long burn. And it's great, Dean, I imagine you put a lot of effort and built up a lot of time and given up a lot of your time. I think there needs to be fundamental change in some of that, but that will also require upskilling some of the existing people who work in those sectors, because almost the people here might be much better at delivering some of those in a university, but we can't suddenly unilaterally give up our businesses and go and become full-time lecturers, and then we'd get out of touch with what's happening in the sector. So Chris, the overarching thing there is I think there's a coming together of all universities rather than any one specific, but I think they're much more open to working with anyone these days because they're not okay. Numbers are down. you know, the £9,000 down. The sector's quite willing to take on people if they haven't been to university. So universities are a lot more open to working collaboratively.
Jane, I looked at your LinkedIn profile, and you're from Liverpool. You've got, you've worked in Liverpool all your life. Never tempted to leave. I mean, would you leave Liverpool? Would you go down to that place called London? If you do, I've had a word with Sarah, and she knows she can show you around. She's never been to Liverpool yet.
Yeah, funnily enough, I was going to say, Sarah, you have to come to Liverpool and come and have a drink with us.
I will do, thank you.
Okay, well, we'll see
catch up. It's to be honest, it's never really appealed to me, and I always wanted to be a corporate lawyer, and obviously all the big corporate firms are in London, and people would say, is that where you want to go? And I'd kind of be like, well, no, I mean, show me age here, but I was in uni when we had Capital of Culture, and Liverpool at the time then was the place to be, so it seemed mad to move away when everything was happening here at the time. And yeah, I just really like the culture and the way everyone is, and everyone's so friendly, and I do the same job pretty much as what the big firms in London are doing, but I only have, a half an hour commute. I'm not chained to my desk. I don't have to sleep in work. So it's never really appealed to me, that side of it. And to be honest, a lot of people that do go down, so newly qualified, go down to London, go down, the bright lights, and within 5 or 6 years they're burnt out and they've had enough and they come back.
You speak like an 83-year-old with the maturity of an 83-year-old. You'd say, is that?
I'm getting old now.
Okay, yeah, you're absolutely not. Lorna, you've got 3 grown-up sons. I know at least one of them works with you at Red Wigwam. I don't know about the circumstances of the other 2, but have they stayed local, or have they, decided they want to get as far away from you as possible?
Well, interesting enough, Chris, I now have 2 of my sons are working for me. Yeah. So my middle son, Ross, has just graduated this year, and he's come into the business as well. So what's been interesting is that the business has been exciting enough to put up with working with their mum. So they've been interested enough in what the business is doing and what it's achieving to be able to sort of come in and do that. And both of them are living in Liverpool and thoroughly enjoying it.
No, it's great. The thing is, if you've got a great business, you don't need to move. If you've got a great job, you don't need to move to the other end of the country. It's about that opportunity. I'm conscious of the time. I've got a couple of questions just to finish off with, if I may, that I'm going to ask. You mentioned, Anna, you mentioned Carl Wong earlier, and interviewed him at the LCR Tech Climbers List. And he said that companies mustn't aspire to be the best in the Northwest or the UK, but the best in the world. And obviously they did the deal, 26 million. Not long after that, and I like to think I played a part in that as well. Do you think, and a question for the whole panel, do you think that Liverpool sets its ambition high enough? What's your take on that, Anna?
No, I don't. I think, it makes my heart sink, to be honest, Chris, when you put questions like, how do we compare to Manchester? Because I think, we don't. And I think anybody who aspires to that, I think we want to do business, though. It's weird, isn't it? Because I think we do want to do business locally. I want to feel that we're that circular economy kind of motion that Liam was talking about before, about using people locally and tapping into talent locally and working with great people locally is all really good. But yeah, I mean, if we're going to be the best at what we do, we have to look beyond the city limits, don't we? We have to look beyond the borders that are no longer borders, are they?
Well, the great news of this community bringing people together is Liam has accepted my, connection request on LinkedIn. Liam, do you think tech businesses in Liverpool City region, set their ambitions high enough?
I'm not sure that that's even the thought process that it's had, let alone where we should be aiming towards. I do want to see an end to this comparison with Manchester as our closest city. It's mad that we would try and compete or even draw a comparison against a city that is very, very close. And the reality of the situation is that most high paid jobs would require you to travel to a city like Manchester. It provides that for the ecosystem. So, for example, one of Make's non-exec directors works, she's a head of service in a big creative Quango. And, well, of course, that kind of job just doesn't exist in Liverpool. But it does exist in the Northwest, and she lives in Liverpool. She spends her money here, and she supports my organisation that's founded here. And actually, it's a patchwork of an ecosystem for the whole of the Northwest. The Liverpool City region, Greater Manchester, Preston, etc. There should be more emphasis on working together and accelerating the things that we're ambitious about. And to be fair, the Liverpool City region and the local industrial strategy and all of the things that the Metro Mayor's putting in place is starting to move us in a direction that really focuses in on the things that we're truly great at. And that's not to say that we shouldn't try to be truly excellent at the other things as well, but we just have to accept scale and size and take some of those circular economy and actions that would help us all.
I'm very mindful of time, actually, and we do need to get wrapped up in about 7 minutes' time. I've already pulled out the pin on this grenade. This is much bigger than the last one, so I'm now throwing this one. I'm lobbing it. Oh, you caught it, Anna, so the question's coming to you. When I interviewed Carl Wong, Carl was talking about, the role of the public sector, and he said the public sector needs to be more private sector focused, more of a private sector mentality and more performance driven. Do you think that's fair, Anna?
Ooh.
You've not caught it. Have you caught it? Is it?
Comment, right, okay, yeah. I think there are instances where there are huge frustrations with private sector at the public sector's potential lack of understanding of the time and effort things like funding applications take, things, going through processes to bid for money, to bid for public money. I think that sometimes it can just feel like a big divide, but actually everybody wants the same outcome. Everybody wants growth, everybody wants to get there. So I think, there is. I think define performance, because the performance from a private sector perspective and the performance from a local authority will be very different. So unless everybody's got a shared understanding of what performance is, I don't think, that's where that gap exists. I'm doing that really annoying political answer, aren't I? Where there's I'll even repeat the question to you again, Chris, in a minute. Just
you have to say to me, Anna, you have to say, that's a good question.
Even better, and that's such a good question.
Yeah, thanks very much, Anna. Thanks very much. You've now bought yourself some more time. I tell you what I'm going to do, actually. I want to throw the question open to you, only because you're somebody who works closely with the public and the private sector as well.
Yeah.
You can see it from both sides. And also, you do have to be slightly cautious in terms of what you say. Lorna Davison is not a person who has to be that cautious. Lorna, I mean, you're probably one of the most driven people I know, in a sense that, you use LinkedIn, your business runs like clockwork, in a sense that you get your LinkedIn post at 7:15, etc., etc., etc. Your business won't succeed because of the public sector. It will succeed because of you. But do you think sometimes, and this is something that people say in terms of that, maybe Liverpool's too reliant on the public sector? And the point that Carl was making is that, we have to think more like a private sector. The public sector needs to think more like a private sector. Do you think that's fair?
I think everybody has to be more commercially aware, and I think we have to be much more focused on what success looks like and not the way that we used to do it or the way that it's politically done now. It is about saying, what does good look like, and make sure we do that. I have to say, from my perspective, I don't give a lot of thought to it. Now, that might be really wrong of me, but I am, as you say, I'm very focused. So I'm focused on who can help me get the job done, who can help me get to the right place, will actually let me make sure I'm engaging with them. And if they're going to slow me down, I'm really not that interested.
Yeah, I mean, Andy, you say it as you see it. You just get on with it. What's your take on the role of the public sector in Liverpool? And does it need to be more private sector focused?
Yeah, what I think I'd like to see is lots of talking shops. So I've been very pointed in my last sort of catch-ups with some of those bodies to say, look, it's great we're saying all these things, but I often miss the email a week later that says, having listened to all that, this is what we're now doing about it. I think I've been at lots of events where I kind of think, okay, that was a good event, but a year later, what's the impact? I think there's probably lots of things that I'd rather focus on that they probably do very well, and I probably have no interest in, like in terms of the infrastructure, the city, transport. I think we've all sat when we were all commuting into the offices in, hours of congestion and cones, and it's very frustrating because, if you historically were trying to get face-to-face to a meeting, maybe that's less of an issue now that we're working remotely. I think the frustration I can often find is, I mean, I brought Microsoft to the city. Google were just about to come up. They approached me and we were going to bring Google up for a whole week long and network them into the city. I got Bruce Daisley up, Vice President of Twitter, to talk about, working, and he'd written a book. And in all those cases, I want to include everybody. I don't want to say the public sector is evil and bad. I think there's lots of things that they do really well. But I think often it's the likes of the people in this room that make a thing happen. You know, Gav's done his creative kitchens and stuff, and you'll appreciate that often it's us trying to, I went to people like Bruntwood who offered the space for free, and, you get somebody else to sponsor some beer and some food. I think we could probably maximize, if we all work together, the assets and the skill sets that they've got with ours, but it just feels that we don't quite connect in the way that would put Liverpool on the map and say, wow, we've got the universities working together, we've got the public and private sector working together. If you talk about ambition, that for me is where I think we would compete with any other city in the world to do those things that are really hard to do.
I just think that sometimes, I'm not looking at the Liverpool per se, but ultimately you're judged on what you deliver, on what you do. It's interesting with the Global Entrepreneur Congress, which we've had more than one in Liverpool, and it's very easy to say, oh, it should have done this and it should have done that. It probably should have done it. They brought people, from all over the world to events, but they struggled to bring people from Liverpool and the UK to that event. That was a problem. I'm not going to criticise them for trying though. Jane, I want to give the final word to you from Napthins as a sponsor of today's event as well, in terms of, has it ticked the boxes? Does what you've heard today, does it confirm what you already think? And, in terms of, what the future of the tech sector looks like in Liverpool, as somebody who's at the younger end of this panel, facts. I mean, we're both about 27, aren't we? What's the future for Liverpool's tech sector in your opinion?
Well, to be honest, I think that was one of the reasons why we wanted to have this event. Obviously, we are, in the grand scheme of things, even though we've been knocking about for a couple of years, we are relatively new to the city. I mean, I've obviously been in the city, but Napthins as a brand. And I think we really just wanted to understand. It's so difficult now. I mean, Gavin used to catch up with Liam, we'd have a coffee, we'd find out what was going on in the tech world. I'd have my sort of input as an outsider, and lockdowns made it a lot harder to do that and to have those conversations. And Liverpool's such a small city anyway, otherwise known as a goldfish bowl. You'd bump into people on the street nearly every day, and we just don't have that anymore. So it's difficult to stay on top of those conversations. So it's been really interesting for us to see what the challenges are, especially hopefully coming out of the end of all of this, and see what challenges and what people think and what we can do to help really as well. So I think there's definitely a lot to take away. I think there's a lot of work that we can do to get involved as well. A lot of the questions have been around education, so that's something that we can look into getting involved with as well. So it's been really interesting and good to get everyone's point of view really, and just because we are at the end, just to say thank you as well on behalf of Napthins to everyone for joining us today, and Chris, to you for hosting as well.
No, thanks very much, Liam. Looks like I want to get out the door. That or the heating's broken. Just final word, actually. Thanks very much to you, Jane. Final word, Anna. Anna, it's no hand grenades this time. Just in terms of, I always think, I don't know what you think as well, but we do events in Liverpool, and when we bring people together, I'm always energized. You always get a bit of banter. People have fun. They're real characters. And that's, we can't compare ourselves to Manchester or London because we'll fail. What would your final throwaway be?
Final throwaway. I think we've encapsulated a lot of Liverpool in the conversation today. I think we've encapsulated, the commercial, purpose-driven work, that I think everybody's, we've probably spent 50% of our time talking about our businesses and 50% of our time talking about how we make a better city, kind of make our city better. And I don't think every panel that I've certainly heard in Manchester doesn't necessarily talk like that, in terms of that we take responsibility for that. So I think it's been great, and great to see so many faces.
Great to see so many different faces as well, and so many great businesses as well. So massive thanks to Gavin, to Matt, who had to lead the call, Lorna, Dean, Andy, Sarah as well for joining us from London. Sarah, Liverpool's calling your name. To Jane, to Liam as well, my new LinkedIn connection as well, and Anna Hayes, my good friend from Happy Profile. Take care. Thanks very much. If I can be of any help, you know where we are. And let's all wave, because that's what we do on Zoom. Have a good day, everyone. Take care.
Thanks very much, guys. Good to meet you all. Bye.